I found Queen Elaran's secret journal and froze when I saw what she'd written about me. From a distance, the ruins looked like the skeleton of a giant shipwreck, broken and scattered across the rocky surface of the planet. Yet even in decay, there was a strange elegance. Towers leaned but did not collapse, walls were cracked but still magnificent, and the air carried whispers of centuries-old secrets. Jaren felt the familiar pull of history, that tingling sensation that told him he was about to find something extraordinary. The palace had been abandoned for centuries, or so the historical records said. No human had lived there since the time of Queen Elaran, a ruler whose wisdom and courage were remembered in stories passed down through generations. She had united warring colonies, negotiated with alien civilizations, and left behind an empire that many believed had vanished into legend. Jaren had heard about her before, of course, but holding a mission to explore her palace was different. This was no ordinary scouting job. His ship, the Odyssey, had detected strange energy signatures emanating from deep within the ruins, signatures that suggested more than just old power sources. Something was alive here, or at least something had been left alive, waiting. He stepped carefully over broken marble floors and past crumbling statues of long-forgotten generals and scientists. Dust hung thick in the air, disturbed only by the soft sound of his boots. The palace was quiet, almost too quiet, and Jaren reminded himself to stay alert. He carried a scanner, a multi-purpose tool that could detect heat, movement, and unusual energy patterns. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. And yet, the closer he got to the heart of the palace, the more he felt an invisible weight pressing down on him, like the building itself was watching. After hours of careful exploration, Jaren came to a wall unlike any other he had passed. It was smooth, polished, and seemed almost to glow faintly in the dim light of the palace. He knelt and ran his fingers across it, and a soft hum resonated from the surface. It was a hidden door. With a thought, he activated his scanner and watched as it traced the wall, revealing a thin seam where the metal of the door met the stone of the palace. With a deep breath, Jaren pressed a small panel and the door slid open with a whisper, revealing a narrow chamber. Inside, the air smelled faintly of metal and old parchment. The chamber was small but carefully organized. In the center rested a pedestal, and on it lay a simple yet striking object, a leather-bound journal, its edges worn but intact. Jaren's pulse quickened. Centuries old, untouched by time and somehow still preserved. He approached it slowly, almost reverently. Queen Elaran's secret journal. He had heard rumors that she had kept personal writings, not just official records but nothing confirmed. And here it was in the heart of her palace, waiting for him. Jaren lifted it gently, feeling the weight of history in his hands. The leather was soft, the pages faintly yellowed, yet each one held a story that could change the way people understood the galaxy. He sat cross-legged on the floor, opened the first page, and began to read. At first, the writing was typical of someone chronicling a ruler's daily life, the ceremonies, the meetings, the strategies. But then, as he turned the pages, something caught his eye. A name. His name. Written centuries before he was even born. Jaren froze. He blinked, thinking perhaps his eyes were deceiving him. He read again more carefully. There it was, clear as day, descriptions, thoughts, even predictions about him. How could this be? How could Queen Elaran, who lived hundreds of years ago, have written about him? A cold shiver ran down his spine. His hands trembled slightly as he continued to scan the pages. The words were specific, almost eerily so. She spoke of someone who would appear in her distant future, someone human who would play a key role in the survival of her empire long after her death. The descriptions were not vague. They matched him in ways that were impossible to explain. His height, his tendencies to question, his instincts in dangerous situations, she had written them all down. Jaren leaned back, trying to calm himself. "This can't be real," he whispered to himself. "It's impossible." But the journal did not lie. Each page, each sentence, carried a certainty that shook him to the core. He felt a mix of fear and awe. Fear because the weight of destiny pressed heavily on his shoulders, and awe because he realized that somehow humanity had been part of a plan larger than anything he had imagined. His mind raced. What did it mean? Was this a warning, a prophecy, or a test? The journal spoke of a key hidden in the stars, a place that only the one described in its pages could unlock. Jaren didn't understand what it was yet, but he felt certain that it was important, and that finding it would change everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity. A sound made him start. Dust fell from the ceiling as a loose stone shifted. He looked up, scanning the shadows. The palace was silent, too silent. It was as if it were holding its breath, waiting to see what he would do next. Jaren shook off the unease. He had faced danger before, in battlefields and on hostile planets, and he had survived. He could survive this. He would survive this. As he read on, he discovered more entries that described distant worlds, unknown civilizations, and conflicts that span light years. Elaran had not only been a queen but a strategist who understood the complexities of the galaxy. She had known that humans, even after her time, could rise to incredible challenges, and somehow she had singled him out. Hours passed without him noticing. The palace had changed as he read. It was no longer just a ruin. It was alive with history, with purpose. The walls seemed to hum softly, the air thick with energy. Each sentence in the journal seemed to guide him, to push him toward something greater. He found an entry that was different from the rest. It was personal, almost intimate. Elaran wrote about qualities she hoped to see in the one who would come centuries later: courage, empathy, intelligence, and a willingness to fight not for glory, but for the survival and unity of humanity. Jaren felt tears prick his eyes. She believed in him, though she had never met him. And suddenly he understood that this journal was not just a record of the past. It was a guide, a challenge, and a call to action. A flicker of light caught his eye. A hidden compartment in the pedestal opened, revealing a small, holographic star map. The map pulsed with faint blue light, highlighting points across distant galaxies. Jaren realized it was connected to the journal's writings. These were the locations mentioned in Elaran's notes, places of power and knowledge left behind for the one she had foretold. He felt a mix of excitement and fear. The adventure ahead was beyond anything he had imagined. The journal had not only revealed a connection to the past, but had given him a path forward, a mission that could shape the future of humanity. He took a deep breath, closed the journal for a moment, and let the enormity of the discovery sink in. For the first time in his life, Jaren felt the true weight of history and destiny pressing down on him. And yet, he also felt hope. If one person could carry this knowledge, if one human could rise to the challenge foretold by a queen long gone, then perhaps humanity itself could achieve greatness beyond imagination. He stood, holding the journal close. The palace seemed to acknowledge him, the walls and shadows embracing his presence as if recognizing that he was indeed the one Elaran had written about. Jaren's mind raced with questions. What was the key in the stars? What dangers awaited him? How could he live up to the expectations of a queen who had seen centuries into the future? He walked toward the chamber's exit, journal in hand, ready to begin a journey that would take him to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. The ruins of Elaran's palace were behind him, silent and waiting, but ahead lay a universe full of mystery, challenge, and destiny. And for the first time in a long time, Jaren felt fully alive, fully human, and fully ready to embrace the future she had written for him. As he stepped out into the light of the alien sun, he whispered a promise to himself and perhaps to Elaran's spirit. "I will find the key. I will honor your words. I will not fail." And with that, Captain Jaren Call began a journey that would test every human quality he had. and reveal the truth of why humanity was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than anyone, queen, alien, or machine, could ever imagine. Jaren Call could not stop thinking about the journal as he navigated the rocky terrain back to the Odyssey. Every step felt heavier, as though the weight of centuries pressed down on him. The desert winds of the planet whipped across his face, but he barely noticed them. His mind was filled with questions, all of them impossible to answer in the moment. How could Queen Elaran have known him? What did she mean by the key hidden in the stars? And why did she place so much faith in a human, someone who would live hundreds of years after her death? Back aboard the Odyssey, Jaren placed the journal carefully on a table and activated his AI companion, Lyra. A holographic figure flickered to life, her soft blue light illuminating the cockpit. "Lyra," Jaren said, trying to steady his voice, "I found something extraordinary. I think it's important, more important than anything we've ever encountered." Lyra's holographic eyes blinked with curiosity. "Show me," she said. Jaren handed her a small portable scanner and carefully positioned it over the journal. Lyra's systems began analyzing the text, scanning it word by word, page by page. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, Lyra spoke. "Captain, this journal contains predictions, detailed descriptions, and instructions. It also mentions a human you. According to this, you are the one referred to as the chosen guide for humanity's survival." Jaren stared at her. "Me? That's impossible." "Captain," Lyra replied calmly, "the evidence is consistent. The journal even describes traits, habits, and choices that match your own. It refers to a mission centuries in the future, one that aligns with your current timeline." Jaren shook his head. He had faced danger in uncharted systems, negotiated with hostile alien races, and survived battles that should have killed him. But this was something else entirely. It was as though fate itself had written him into history. And now, centuries later, he was standing at the beginning of the mission that had been predicted long before he was born. He opened the journal again, scanning for more clues. Queen Elaran had not written plainly about her methods or goals. Instead, she had left subtle hints and codes. One of the entries spoke of a key hidden among the stars, accessible only to the one who possesses the courage to rise when all hope seems lost. Another described locations scattered across distant galaxies, places where human knowledge and technology had been preserved, waiting for the right person to find them. Jaren ran his fingers through his hair. It was overwhelming. There were no maps in conventional coordinates. Everything was hidden, encrypted, and carefully disguised, yet he could not ignore it. He felt a spark deep within him, a pull that told him this was his purpose, whether he understood it or not. "Lyra," he said finally, "we need to find these places. We need to follow her map and understand what she left for humanity. If this is real, the survival of humans, maybe even the galaxy, could depend on it." Lyra's holographic form nodded. "I will begin decrypting the coordinates and cross-referencing them with known star systems. It may take some time." Jaren sat back, staring out at the stars. For the first time, he felt the true scale of what he was dealing with. This was not a simple exploration mission. It was a journey into the unknown, a race against time and the universe itself. And he was not alone in this. The journal suggested that other forces, human and alien, would be drawn to the same knowledge, motivated by greed, curiosity, or fear. Days passed as Lyra worked to decode the star map. Jaren spent his time studying the journal, memorizing the entries, and trying to understand Queen Elaran's intentions. The more he read, the more he realized that she had anticipated human strengths and weaknesses in a way that made him shiver. She described humans as unpredictable, capable of great kindness or terrible destruction, but always resilient. And in the pages written about him, she emphasized not power but choice, the ability to decide rightly under pressure, to act with courage, and to protect others even when it was difficult. Finally, Lyra spoke. "Captain, the coordinates are partially decrypted. There are 6 primary locations, each containing a fragment of technology or knowledge that is crucial. These fragments must be assembled to unlock what the journal calls the Star Key." Jaren leaned forward. 6 locations. That's across how many light years? Lyra's projection displayed a rotating map of star systems, nebulae, and uncharted space. Approximately 15,000 light-years in total. Some are in systems unknown to human records, likely concealed intentionally to protect them from interference. Jaren felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. This was a mission beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. It would require courage, intelligence, and ingenuity, qualities that Queen Elaran had believed humans still possessed centuries later. He realized that the journal was not just about him. It was a testament to human potential. The first location was relatively nearby, on a planet orbiting a dying star. Jaren prepared the Odyssey for launch. He checked supplies, weapons, and life support systems, knowing that the journey would not be easy. The planet's surface was rumored to be hostile, and the fragments of technology were likely protected by mechanisms designed to test the skill and intelligence of those who sought them. As the ship's engines roared to life, Jaren thought again about the journal. He remembered a passage that spoke of a human who would face not just physical challenges, but moral ones. The Queen had written that true courage was shown not in battle, but in choices made when survival conflicted with ethics. Jaren wondered what trials awaited him and whether he was ready to meet them. The journey through space was long and filled with obstacles. Cosmic storms rocked the ship, and navigation through dense asteroid fields required precise calculations. Yet Jaren thrived under pressure. He felt alive in a way he had never experienced, as though every skill he had developed over years of training and adventure was meant for this moment. Along the way, he encountered unexpected resistance. A small fleet of scavenger ships, drawn to the same signals as the Odyssey, attempted to intercept him. They were not hostile aliens, but human mercenaries seeking to claim the technology for themselves. Jaren realized that the journal's warning about other forces was not exaggeration. The pursuit forced him to use every tactic he knew: stealth maneuvers, evasive flying, and clever diversions. He managed to escape, but it reminded him that the mission would not be simple. Finally, after weeks of travel, he reached the first planet. Its surface was barren, a desert of jagged rocks and dust storms. The fragment was hidden deep within a canyon, protected by environmental hazards and automated defenses. Jaren disembarked, journal in hand, and began the search. The canyon tests were brutal. Rocks shifted unpredictably, sudden sandstorms reduced visibility to nearly zero, and the automated defenses activated whenever he approached the protected site. Yet Jaren persisted. He relied on human ingenuity, building temporary bridges, using mirrors to reflect light beams, and studying the mechanisms to find weaknesses. Each challenge highlighted what made humans extraordinary: creativity, persistence, and courage under pressure. Finally, he reached a chamber hidden beneath the canyon floor. Inside, on a pedestal of alien design, rested the first fragment. It was small, metallic, and inscribed with symbols that seemed alive. Jaren reached out, and as his fingers touched it, a surge of energy pulsed through the room. The fragment recognized him. The journal had been right. He was the one meant to find it. He held the fragment carefully. It was more than just technology. It was a symbol of humanity's potential. And as he placed it in the containment case aboard the Odyssey, he realized the truth of Queen Elaran's words. Humans were resilient, intelligent, and capable of greatness, far beyond what other civilizations could imagine. The mission ahead would be dangerous, but it was also a testament to the strength of his species. As the Odyssey lifted off the planet, Jaren looked back at the barren landscape, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. There were 5 more fragments, each in a distant, dangerous part of the galaxy. Each would test his skill, intelligence, and courage. And each would reveal more about the Queen's vision for humanity, a vision that now rested on his shoulders. Lyra's voice broke his thoughts. "Captain, I have completed further analysis of the journal. There are patterns suggesting not just locations, but sequences. The fragments must be collected in a specific order to unlock the star key fully. Any deviation could result in failure." Jaren nodded. "Then we follow the map exactly. No shortcuts, no guesses. This is bigger than all of us. Humanity is counting on it." As the stars streaked past the Odyssey, Jaren felt a surge of determination. He was no longer just an explorer. He was a participant in a story written centuries ago, a story that depended on human courage, ingenuity, and moral strength. The journal had awakened something in him, not just fear or curiosity, but purpose. The first fragment was secured, the path ahead illuminated by the Queen's foresight. Jaren Call knew the journey would only become more perilous, but he also knew that humanity was capable of rising to any challenge. With the journal as his guide, Lyra at his side, and the fragments waiting to be found, he was ready to face whatever the universe had in store. And in that moment, drifting through the infinite darkness of space, Jaren understood the truth of Queen Elaran's vision. Humans were not just survivors. They were creators, thinkers, fighters, and leaders. And the universe had no choice but to recognize their strength. The galaxy stretched endlessly before Captain Jaren Call as the Odyssey traveled toward the second fragment. The stars gleamed like scattered diamonds on black velvet, and for a moment, Jaren allowed himself to feel awe. The universe was vast, mysterious, and alive with possibilities. But beneath that wonder, he felt a weight pressing on him, a sense of urgency that reminded him the mission was far from simple. Every fragment was a piece of a puzzle, and every choice he made carried consequences not just for himself, but for all of humanity. Lyra worked tirelessly beside him, analyzing star systems and cross-referencing the Queen's journal with known and unknown planets. "Captain," she said, her tone calm but firm, "the next fragment is located on a planet within the Nyarlian cluster. Atmospheric conditions are extreme, with frequent storms of plasma and magnetic turbulence. Approach cautiously." Jaren leaned back in his seat and studied the star map. The Nyarlian cluster was notorious for unpredictable celestial phenomena, but he had faced worse before. Still, he knew this mission was unlike anything he had done. Queen Elaran had not just hidden the fragments, she had designed tests, trials meant to challenge human skill, courage, and moral judgment. Every obstacle he had faced so far had been a reminder of that. "Prepare for jump," he said, steadying himself. The Odyssey roared as it accelerated, stars stretching into streaks of light as they traveled through hyperspace. Jaren closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about the first fragment. Holding it in his hands had been more than a victory. It had been proof that he was on the right path, that he truly was the person Elaran had written about centuries before he was born. Hours later, the ship emerged from hyperspace, and Jaren gazed at the Nyarlian cluster. The planets glimmered through dense clouds of charged particles, and arcs of plasma danced across the sky in brilliant bursts. One planet, jagged and storm-lashed, glowed with an eerie orange light. This was the one. The fragment awaited him there, hidden within a cavern system said to be guarded by nature itself. Jaren suited up and prepared the Odyssey for atmospheric entry. The storm outside lashed at the ship, magnetic interference shaking the hull and forcing him to make careful adjustments. Lyra guided him, projecting real-time readings of wind speed, plasma density, and energy surges. It was a delicate dance between human skill and AI precision, and together they navigated the turbulent skies. The planet's surface was hostile beyond anything Jaren had anticipated. Mountains of jagged rock jutted like broken teeth from the ground, and rivers of molten metal ran across plains of blackened stone. Storms erupted without warning, lightning arcing across the sky and striking the terrain in blinding flashes. Yet amidst the danger, he felt exhilaration. Humans had always survived impossible odds. This was just another test, a reminder that ingenuity, patience, and courage were the tools that separated humans from every other species in the galaxy. Jaren's first challenge came when he reached the entrance to the cavern. A chasm of molten rock blocked his path, the only bridge a thin, unstable span of obsidian. One misstep and he would plunge into fire. He took a deep breath, focusing his mind. Carefully, he tested each step, using his hands and feet to maintain balance. His pulse raced as the cavern trembled with distant thunder, but he kept moving. Human determination, he realized, was more powerful than fear. Inside the cavern, he encountered automated defense systems designed to challenge the mind. Ancient alien machines, remnants of civilizations long gone, tested both intellect and morality. Puzzles and obstacles demanded logic, reasoning, and creativity. Jaren studied each mechanism with patience. He had faced similar challenges before, but these were designed centuries in advance to interact with someone just like him. One particular test required him to divert the flow of an electrified river of plasma through a series of channels to unlock a gate. It was impossible to brute force. Instead, he analyzed the conduits, considered the energy patterns, and used fragments of reflective metal to guide the plasma safely. Hours passed, yet he remained calm. Human intelligence was not about speed. It was about understanding, observation, and applying knowledge with precision. After the plasma test, Jaren reached a chamber deeper within the cavern. The walls glowed faintly with alien symbols, pulsing with energy. At the center rested the second fragment, suspended above a pedestal surrounded by a shimmering force field. As he approached, holographic projections activated, simulating scenarios of conflict and moral choice. The system tested him, asking questions without words, presenting illusions of lives at risk, and forcing him to make decisions about saving some at the expense of others. Jaren's heart pounded. Every choice mattered. He remembered Elaran's words from the journal. True courage was not about fighting, but about making the right decision when the stakes were highest. He focused, balancing compassion with pragmatism. Slowly, steadily, he navigated the trial. When he reached the fragment, the field dissipated, acknowledging his success. He lifted it, feeling a pulse of energy that was almost alive. Securing the fragment aboard the Odyssey, he reflected on the trials. Each challenge was a reminder of human potential. Humans were adaptable, capable of thinking creatively under pressure, and able to make moral choices even when survival was uncertain. These qualities, Queen Elaran had believed, would allow humanity to endure challenges that no other species could face. But the journey was not over. As he prepared to depart the planet, Jaren noticed faint energy signatures moving across the surface. Mercenaries, scavengers, or another rival group seeking the fragments, they were on his trail. He felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. Humans thrived under pressure, and now he would have to rely not just on intelligence and courage, but on speed and strategy to escape. The Odyssey rose into the stormy skies, plasma arcs cracking dangerously close. Jaren piloted with precision, weaving through lightning and avoiding natural hazards while Lyra calculated optimal escape routes. For hours, they maneuvered through the planetary chaos, testing human skill against the raw forces of nature. Finally, they emerged into orbit, fragments secured and mission intact. In the quiet that followed, Jaren allowed himself to breathe. The second fragment was only one step on the journey, but it was a confirmation. The journal's guidance was real. Humans were capable of extraordinary achievements, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. He reviewed the journal again, noting new entries he had not studied before. Queen Elaran had written extensively about the qualities of the fragments, emphasizing that each one represented not just technology, but knowledge and potential. They were tools to awaken human ingenuity, tests to reveal resilience, and symbols of the species' ability to rise to challenges that no other life form could endure. As the Odyssey prepared to jump toward the third fragment, Jaren felt a mix of excitement and resolve. The galaxy was vast and the dangers ahead were unknown, yet he was determined. Each trial proved that humanity's greatest strength was not machinery or power, but the mind, the heart, and the will to persevere. The journey to the third fragment would take them into uncharted territories, where alien civilizations, cosmic phenomena, and moral dilemmas awaited. But Jaren was ready. Every skill, every lesson from the past, every ounce of courage he possessed would be tested. And yet he felt confident that humanity could endure, adapt, and thrive. Lyra's voice brought him back to the present. "Captain, I have calculated the most efficient path to the next location. It will require navigating an unstable wormhole near the Phaedrus belt. Risk is high, but travel time is reduced significantly." Jaren nodded. "We'll take the risk. The faster we move, the better our chances. We have a mission, Lyra, and we cannot fail." As the Odyssey accelerated toward the wormhole, Jaren gazed out at the swirling colors of space. He thought about the Queen, her wisdom, and her vision for humanity. Centuries ago, she had believed in the potential of one human to carry a mission that could change the fate of countless lives. And now, here he was, living that vision, understanding that the strength of humans lay in their resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage. The wormhole approached like a living entity, twisting and writhing with violent energy. Jaren felt the familiar tension of a pilot facing extreme danger, yet he also felt anticipation. Humans had faced the impossible countless times before. They had crossed deserts, scaled mountains, colonized planets, and survived wars that should have destroyed them. Now they were about to test themselves again, in the vastness of the galaxy, guided by the words of a queen long gone but never forgotten. As the Odyssey entered the wormhole, stars stretched into lines of light, reality bending around them. Jaren gripped the controls, focused and alert. Every calculation mattered. Every instinct mattered. Humans were not just explorers, they were creators, thinkers, and survivors. And through courage, intelligence, and morality, they could overcome even the most daunting challenges the universe could present. Emerging from the wormhole, the third fragment awaited, hidden on a planet beyond recorded space. Jaren felt a surge of determination. The journey was far from over, but humanity's strength, reflected in his own actions and choices, was undeniable. The Queen's journal had guided him this far, and he was ready to continue, proving that human resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage were forces that no alien or machine could ever surpass. The Odyssey glided silently through the empty void of space, carrying Captain Jaren Call toward the fourth fragment of Queen Elaran's ancient plan. The hum of the engines was the only sound, punctuated by Lyra's occasional updates on star positions and planetary anomalies. The farther they traveled, the more Jaren felt the weight of responsibility. The fragments were no longer just objects of technology. They were tests of humanity itself, each one revealing a deeper truth about what humans could achieve. The fourth fragment's location was unlike anything Jaren had encountered so far. Hidden in the heart of a massive asteroid field near the Urandor belt, the fragment was said to be protected by an alien guardian, a sentient intelligence that had been created centuries ago to ensure that only a worthy human could claim it. The Queen's journal had described this guardian in detail, though Jaren still struggled to imagine how an ancient machine, or perhaps a living consciousness, could assess moral courage, intelligence, and resilience. "Lyra," he said, checking the navigation systems, We're entering the asteroid field. Scan for any anomalies, especially signs of the Guardian. Lyra's holographic form flickered. Sensors indicate unusual energy readings within the central cluster. The Guardian may already be aware of our presence. Caution is advised. Jaren tightened his grip on the controls. He had faced hostile planets, mercenaries, and storms of plasma, but this was different. The Guardian was designed to understand humans, to challenge them in ways no natural force could. Every instinct he had honed over years of exploration told him that the trials ahead would demand not only skill, but understanding of his own mind and morals. The asteroid field was a chaotic maze of floating rock and debris. The Odyssey weaved through narrow gaps, dodging massive boulders and unpredictable gravitational distortions. Lyra's calculations were precise, but even so, the danger was palpable. Jaren focused on every movement, every decision. One mistake could crush the ship or leave it stranded in the deadly void. Hours passed as they navigated the treacherous cluster. Then, without warning, a shockwave of energy pulsed through the ship. Lights flickered and the hull shuddered. Jaren's eyes widened as he scanned the sensors. "Lyra, what was that?" he demanded. "Unknown," she replied. "But energy readings match the descriptions of the Guardian's initial activation. It is aware of us." Jaren's pulse quickened. The Guardian was testing him already, reaching out in ways that humans could barely perceive. He knew that this was a trial unlike any other, one that would challenge not just his skills, but his understanding of what it meant to be human. As the ship approached a particularly dense area, the Guardian's presence became undeniable. A massive, translucent form materialized before them, composed of light and energy, constantly shifting and reconfiguring itself. Its shape was vaguely humanoid, yet alien, and its presence exuded intelligence. Jaren felt as though the being could see into his thoughts, analyzing every emotion, every doubt, every decision. The Guardian spoke, not in words, but through a resonance that filled the ship and his mind. Questions and scenarios appeared, simulations of impossible choices, illusions of danger, and moral dilemmas that demanded immediate action. Each challenge was designed to test his courage, his creativity, and his ethical judgment. The first simulation presented a scenario in which an alien colony was under attack, and only one person could be saved. Jaren hesitated, weighing the options. The simulation forced him to consider not just the immediate outcome, but the long-term consequences of his choice. After careful thought, he acted, saving the most vulnerable, using his knowledge and intuition to minimize harm. The Guardian pulsed, acknowledging his decision. The next trial was even more complex. He faced a labyrinth filled with shifting walls, energy traps, and holographic threats. Each movement had to be precise, yet he could not rely solely on instinct. He had to analyze patterns, anticipate changes, and act decisively. Time seemed to stretch, and Jaren felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. Human ingenuity, he realized, was not about brute force. It was about observation, reasoning, and adaptation. After navigating the labyrinth, he reached a chamber where the Guardian tested him directly. Images of his past appeared, moments of fear, failure, and doubt. It forced him to confront his own limitations, to acknowledge mistakes, and to learn from them. Jaren felt a pang of vulnerability, but he embraced it. The journal had emphasized that true strength was not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. Finally, the Guardian presented the ultimate test. A projection of a starship, filled with humans and aliens alike, was under threat from a collapsing space station. Jaren had seconds to decide how to intervene. He analyzed every possible solution, considering the safety of all involved. Using his knowledge, quick thinking, and creativity, he orchestrated a daring maneuver that stabilized the station and rescued everyone aboard. The Guardian pulsed brightly, acknowledging his success. The fragment appeared before him, suspended in a field of energy. Its surface shimmered with alien inscriptions, alive with light. Jaren approached slowly, understanding that claiming it was not a victory of power, but of wisdom, courage, and moral judgment. As his hands closed around it, the energy pulsed through him, a recognition that he had passed the test. The Guardian receded, leaving him with a sense of accomplishment and awe. Securing the fragment aboard the Odyssey, Jaren reflected on the trials. Each one had been a lesson in human potential. The Queen's vision was clear. Humans were capable of extraordinary feats because of their intelligence, adaptability, courage, and moral integrity. No machine or alien could replicate these qualities. Humanity's strength lay not in technology alone, but in the choices they made and the challenges they overcame. Lyra projected the journal on the main screen. "Captain, the final fragment remains. It is located in an uncharted system near the edge of known space. The journey will be perilous and the challenges are unknown. Preparation is essential." Jaren nodded. The trials had tested his skill, courage, and morality, but they had also strengthened his resolve. He understood now that the fragments were not merely objects to collect. They were lessons, each one revealing the depth of human potential and the capacity for greatness. As the Odyssey prepared for the jump to the final fragment, Jaren felt a mix of anticipation and determination. The journey had already tested him in ways he had never imagined, yet he knew the greatest challenge still lay ahead. The Queen's journal had guided him, but now it was his actions, his choices, and his courage that would determine the outcome. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the ship entered hyperspace. Jaren allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The Guardian had been more than a test of skill, it had been a test of character. Humans were more than explorers or warriors, they were thinkers, problem solvers, and moral agents. The Queen's foresight was astonishing, but the true revelation was that humanity had the potential to rise to any challenge, no matter how great. The Odyssey emerged from hyperspace near the final fragment. The planet before them glowed faintly with an eerie blue light, its surface shrouded in mist and storms. Jaren felt a thrill of anticipation. The final test awaited, and with it, the culmination of centuries of planning and prophecy. He reviewed the journal one last time before landing, tracing Elaran's words with his fingers. Her faith in humanity was unwavering, and now it was his turn to live up to that faith. As the ship descended through the planet's misty atmosphere, Jaren felt the familiar mixture of fear and excitement. The trials ahead would challenge every skill he had honed, every lesson he had learned, and every ounce of courage he possessed. Yet he felt certain of one thing: humans were capable of greatness, and through ingenuity, determination, and moral strength, they could overcome any obstacle. The planet's surface was alive with strange energy currents, pulsing in rhythm with the planet itself. Jaren stepped onto solid ground, the fragment's location marked in the journal. He moved cautiously, aware that the final test would demand everything he had. The Guardian's trials had prepared him, but the ultimate challenge awaited, a test that would determine if humanity could truly rise to its fullest potential. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on him, but also the strength of human resilience. Every step forward was a step toward proving that humans were more than survivors. They were innovators, thinkers, and moral beings capable of shaping the galaxy. The final fragment was close, and with it, the culmination of Queen Elaran's vision. As Jaren moved through the mist, he whispered to himself, "I will not fail. Humanity will rise. I will honor the Queen's words." With courage in his heart and determination guiding his actions, he approached the site of the final fragment, ready to face the ultimate trial that would test not only his skill and intelligence, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The stage was set, the Guardian awaited. and humanity's future rested on the choices of one man who had been foreseen centuries before, whose courage, ingenuity, and moral strength would determine the fate of countless lives across the galaxy. The Odyssey descended carefully through the thick mist that shrouded the final fragment's resting place. Captain Jaren Call gripped the controls, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the culmination of centuries of prophecy, planning, and human ingenuity. The Queen's journal had guided him this far, but now, every decision he made, every step he took, would determine whether humanity could rise to meet the greatest challenge it had ever faced. The planet's surface was alive with energy. Pulses of blue and silver light shimmered across the rocks, as though the ground itself were breathing. Jaren felt a strange resonance beneath his feet, a connection to the fragment he was about to claim. This was not merely a piece of ancient technology. It was the key to humanity's future, a symbol of potential and hope forged by a queen who had foreseen centuries in advance. He stepped out of the Odyssey, journal in hand, and approached the location marked in the entries. The air was thick and charged with power. The final fragment hovered above a pedestal, glowing with an intensity that made him squint. Its surface shimmered with alien inscriptions, alive with a pulse that matched the beat of his own heart. As he reached toward it, a voice, not spoken but felt, resonated through his mind. "Only the one who embodies courage, wisdom, and humanity may claim me," the voice said. Jaren paused, closing his eyes briefly. He thought of all he had faced, the storms of distant planets, the mercenaries who had pursued him, the labyrinths and moral trials tested by the Guardian in the asteroid field. Every step had been a lesson in ingenuity, adaptability, and compassion. He had survived because he had trusted his mind, his instincts, and his ability to make ethical choices even under pressure. He extended his hands and lifted the fragment. Energy surged through him, but instead of pain, he felt clarity. The fragment was alive, recognizing the human potential within him. It pulsed with light, integrating with the other fragments he had collected, forming a lattice of power and knowledge. The Queen's vision was coming together, centuries later through him. Suddenly, the sky above the planet darkened. A fleet of alien ships appeared on the horizon, massive vessels that radiated hostility. Jaren's heart skipped a beat. The Queen's journal had mentioned threats, but now they were real, visible, and immediate. These were beings of intelligence and power, and they had come for the fragments. They did not yet know the full potential of humanity, but they intended to claim what they could. Jaren returned to the Odyssey, fragments secured, and prepared for defense. Lyra projected the alien fleet on the main screen, analyzing their formations, weaknesses, and energy signatures. "Captain," she said, "they are advanced, but not invincible. We can use the fragment's energy to create a defensive shield and countermeasures." "We will need to act strategically." Jaren nodded. Humans had always thrived under pressure, turning adversity into opportunity. He formulated a plan, relying not on brute force, but on creativity and intelligence. "We'll draw them closer," he said, "and use the planet's energy to amplify the fragments. We can outmaneuver them, not with strength, but with strategy. Humanity's greatest weapons are our minds and our courage." As the alien fleet advanced, Jaren executed his plan. Using the fragment's energy, he created a network of shields and traps, manipulating the planet's natural forces. The aliens launched attacks, but each move was anticipated, countered by human ingenuity. The sky erupted in bursts of light as energy fields collided with the alien ships. Yet Jaren remained calm, focusing on the larger picture. Every decision mattered. Every choice had consequences. The battle raged for hours, testing not only Jaren's skill but the strength of humanity itself. He used the fragments to amplify the Odyssey's capabilities, creating temporary wormholes to outmaneuver the fleet, generating energy pulses to disable weapons, and guiding human colonies to safety. Each action reflected the Queen's vision. Humans were not merely fighters, they were thinkers, innovators, and protectors. At one critical moment, a massive alien warship targeted the Odyssey, preparing to unleash a destructive energy beam. Jaren's instincts and quick thinking came into play. He rerouted energy from the fragments to create a reflective barrier, redirecting the beam back at the warship. The vessel disintegrated in a brilliant explosion, proving that human ingenuity could surpass even the greatest technological power in the galaxy. Lyra's voice was calm amidst the chaos. "Captain, the final sequence is ready. If we align the fragments, we can create a permanent defense network for humanity, capable of repelling this entire fleet." Jaren understood instantly. The fragments were more than tools, they were symbols of human resilience and intelligence. They had been designed not just to survive, but to thrive, to elevate humanity above its limits. With precise coordination, he aligned the fragments, activating a lattice of energy that radiated across space, enveloping human colonies and systems in a protective shield. The alien fleet faltered. Their attacks were deflected, their ships destabilized by forces they could not comprehend. They had underestimated humanity, relying on strength alone, while humans combined courage, intelligence, and moral vision. Jaren watched as the fleet retreated, broken and defeated, leaving the galaxy in a stunned silence. Breathing heavily, Jaren looked out at the stars. The fragments glowed softly, integrated into a network of human ingenuity and courage. The Queen's prophecy was complete. Humanity had faced the impossible, relied on its greatest qualities, and emerged stronger. The trials, the fragments, the guardians, and the battles had all been part of a plan that recognized the indomitable spirit of humans. He returned to the journal one last time, reading the final lines. Queen Elaran had written, "Humanity's strength is not in power alone, but in courage, wisdom, and the choices made when hope is faintest. The one who carries this knowledge will ensure that humans rise, not as conquerors but as protectors and creators of the galaxy." Jaren smiled, a mixture of relief and pride flooding through him. He had been that one person, guided by prophecy, yet empowered by human resilience. Every challenge, every danger, every trial had proven the same truth. Humans were capable of greatness beyond measure. He activated a beacon, sending a message to human colonies across the galaxy. It was not a call to arms, but a signal of hope. Humans could face any challenge, overcome any threat, and unite through ingenuity and courage. The galaxy had underestimated them, but now humanity's strength was undeniable. Days passed as Jaren ensured the fragments were securely integrated into a network of defense and knowledge. Human colonies reported stability, energy flows normalized, and communications across vast distances were enhanced. The galaxy, once a chaotic and dangerous place, now had a new balance, humanity at its center, not through domination, but through resilience, intelligence, and moral courage. Lyra floated beside him, her holographic form radiating calm assurance. "Captain, the mission is complete. The fragments are secured, the network activated, and humanity's safety ensured." Jaren nodded. "Yes, Lyra, but more than that, humanity has proven itself. We survived, we adapted, and we rose to the challenge. Queen Elaran believed in us centuries ago, and now we've shown the galaxy why." For the first time in weeks, Jaren allowed himself to relax. He looked at the stars stretching infinitely before him and thought of the future. There would be challenges, as always, but humanity had proven that it could meet any obstacle with courage, intelligence, and heart. Every trial, every fragment, every test had revealed the essence of what it meant to be human. He held the Queen's journal in his hands, feeling the connection across centuries. Elaran had foreseen the rise of one person to unlock humanity's potential, but it had been more than a prophecy. It had been a call to action, a challenge to prove that humans could endure, innovate, and lead. And Jaren, guided by her words and empowered by human resilience, had done exactly that. As the Odyssey prepared to return to the nearest human colony, Jaren reflected on the journey. He had faced storms that could destroy worlds, navigated labyrinths of moral and intellectual challenge, and outwitted enemies that sought to claim humanity's future for themselves. And through it all, he had relied not on luck, not on brute force, but on human qualities, the very traits that defined his species. He placed the journal carefully in the ship's archive, ensuring that it would be preserved for future generations. The Queen's words, her vision, and the fragments of technology were now a part of humanity's legacy. And as he gazed at the stars, he realized that this was only the beginning. Humans would continue to explore, to innovate, to defend, and to rise to any challenge that the universe presented. Jaren allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. The trials had ended. The fragments were secured. Humanity's place in the galaxy was stronger than ever. And he knew, with certainty, that the qualities that had carried him this far, courage, intelligence, ingenuity, and moral strength, would continue to guide humans into a future full of possibility. The stars seemed to shine brighter as the Odyssey lifted off from the planet. Jaren smiled, feeling a profound sense of purpose. Queen Elaran's vision was no longer a prophecy, it was a living reality. Humanity had not just survived the trials, it had triumphed. The galaxy would remember this moment, not because of one man alone, but because of the enduring strength of all humans, rising to meet destiny with courage, intelligence, and heart. And in that moment, drifting through the infinite expanse of space, Captain Jaren Call understood the full truth of the Queen's vision. Humans were not only survivors, not only explorers, not only warriors. They were creators, thinkers, protectors, and a force capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. Humanity had risen, and it would never be underestimated again.